18 years of experience in marketing and sales. And he's a corporate trainer right now based out of Denver. And he consults with many Fortune 100 companies in the area of like influencing skills and negotiation skills. And he was trained at Harvard Law School, and he also went through training with the famous Robert Cialdini's like a persuasion seminar. And he's widely traveled. He's featured on TEDx talks, and he's an avid Toastmasters and has started and mentored over 10 classes in India. And he retains his sanity with his photos of PG, Workhouse, and Asterix comics. Let's give an applause to CK.
Thank you, Sekin. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I must thank Sekin for the introduction that was perfect, very precise and correct. Now, why am I telling you this? You send your resume much in advance, and people either mispronounce your name or they don't get your qualifications right. Like it happened to a person called David Collins. Am I audible to the last row?
Yes.
Yeah. And introducer came and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome David Collins, an outstanding businessman who made $1 million in the stock market in 1961 in Pennsylvania." David Collins was quite happy, but he was a bit embarrassed. He said, "Thank you so much, but I'd like to clarify. It was not 1961, it was 1971. It was not Pennsylvania, it was California. It was not at the stock markets, it was at the races. It was not $1 million, it was just $10,000. And it was not me, David Collins, but my brother Michael Collins. And he did not make it, he lost it." So when you think of that introduction, I thought Sekin did a pretty decent job. Thank you so much. So, very delighted to be at Wharton. If you forgive the cliche, talking about persuasion in Wharton is like carrying coal to Newcastle. I think this is the home of Robert Shell and Mario Mosa, who've written an amazing book called The Art of Who. You know that, isn't it? Winning others over. And I refer extensively from these two gentlemen's book. So it may sound a bit odd to come and talk about persuasion here. So I'm not trying to preach something, but with my exposure to cross-cultural marketing, one of the biggest challenges today is how do I get the other person to agree? Yes or no? And as sales, you know the 4 P's of marketing. Please, 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 and please. Apart from that, do we have some strategies that we have that you can persuade the other party? Very funnily, initially my talk was titled as Persuade with Power. And then some people came and said, what's the big deal? If I have power, if I have authority, I can persuade anybody. Now, can you tell us something where we can persuade the other party when I don't have enough of authority? I consult with a lot of corporates, and you know what is the biggest challenge for middle managers? I have a lot of responsibility, but not adequate authority, which is what you're going to face when you're getting into the corporate world. So how do I use all the skills and persuade the other party? So this is going to be some kind of a sharing of experience. I'd like you to ask me or interrupt me anytime, because there's not going to be a PowerPoint loaded, or I'm not going to be preaching from the pedestal. If you think I'm going fast, please stop me, or if my accent is a bit funny, please interrupt me. So this is not going to be a lecture only presentation. I'll tell you why. Before I started teaching, I went to my professor and said, "Sir, I'm going to be teaching." He said, "CK, be careful. In every class, there will be one guy who goes on asking you questions, and your first instinct will be to ask him to shut up." He said, "Please don't do that." You know why? Because he may be the only one listening to you. So I'd be happy if more and more people ask me this. But the last time I went to, a university in India, and I said, ask. One of them got up and said, "When is the coffee break?" I hope you guys do not ask this question, right? Okay, let's get on to the subject proper. I'll just introduce some bit of theory, some bit of concepts. I don't think you can teach in a B school without drawing a matrix, right? So allow me to draw a matrix, and then we will draw how do you persuade without power? In any activity, you have two things. One, an influencer, and the other party can be the receiver. It could be a boss, it could be a client, It could be an associate or it could be a subordinate. Many times, this is the curve that we get. We call this as a fixation curve, where both the parties involved are so rigid, are so pig-headed in their ideas that they refuse to see each other's point of view. Does this happen quite often or not? Imagine a discussion between two religious fundamentalists. This is what is likely to happen. I'm simply not going to look at the other person's side. And when you get into a discussion like this, you get frustrated, you get drained because you're not getting any kind of a result. If this is bad, look at the next curve. I for influencer and R for receiver. Both the parties are completely polarized and absolutely there is no point of agreement. Many times when you get into this curve, there's actually break-in of relationships. And suddenly almost negotiation breaks down. Any idea why this happens? What causes this kind of a dissonance when you're trying to get agreement from parties or in a sales negotiation? What do you think can be the reason for this?
People's egos are hurt.
People's egos are hurt, right? I think you nailed it very well. As long as you're talking data, as long as you're talking professionally, you don't have any chance of major misgivings. But the moment you get into anger, hatred, ego, and a downplay of emotions, this is what is likely to happen. And when you get into negotiations, please remember, don't expect polite or civil behavior just because the other party is esteemed or elite or he does have a very fancy title. It does not happen that way. Very recently, one of my clients in the IT business was negotiating with Siemens, a very, very major order. Everything was going smooth. The other party was acting like a darling. Almost completed, and when this IT organization came up with the price point, it seems this gentleman suddenly threw up his fists and simply threw the proposal across and said, "How can you guys charge me so much?" Completely uncivil behavior, almost threatening to walk out. And he felt so dispirited. He said, "Just now this guy was so polite. What happened?" But somehow they managed to get the deal, and after which he went and asked his secretary, "Why did your boss behave like this?" And the secretary, with a wink in his eye, said, "My boss uses this as a tactic to get you into submission." And don't ever think that behavior will be polite, because these people use this as a tactic, and your skill as a persuader or a negotiator or an influencer is not to get provoked by such people. In fact, senior negotiators use this as a tactic and say, if I can provoke you, I can control you. A very famous CEO of Infosys, Mr. Narayan Murthy, I'm sure you must have heard of him. He says, in negotiations, in God we trust. All others bring data to the table. Data is smooth. But what happens when people step out of the framework, then you have a problem. So your challenge is not to get provoked. Be aware that people continue to do this. But I think we are not here to find out what doesn't work. I think we are all here to find out as an influencer, can I make a point which is so simple, charismatic, and compelling that the other party automatically moves towards my point of view? This is bliss. This is ultimate for any sales guy, and we call this as persuasion. Today, organizations are willing to spend any kind of money for the ability to get things done. In fact, there's a very famous CEO who says, problems are problems, excuses are excuses, but only performance is reality. World does not have time for people who come up with excuses. I'm sure you know it better than anyone else. So, what are the factors that lead you to become a better persuader? More importantly, across cultures, what makes people agree to certain things? Although we agree that we are all human beings, the way somebody looks at something is completely different from what you look at. Just to give you an example. Recently, an American delegation was having a protracted negotiation with a Saudi Arabian company. And the negotiation was going on well So the American delegate gets up and says, do we have a deal? What do you understand by this statement? Do we have a deal? When an American says, do we have a deal? What do you understand? Do we have an agreement? Right? But the Saudi Arabians could not understand the word deal. They said, what is this deal? And the American said, this is a term used in poker. What is poker? It's a form of gambling. And the Saudis said, we are against gambling, and they called off the negotiation. I'm not joking. Very recently, just 3 months ago. So you understand, persuasion, as Second was giving us an introduction, he says, today persuasion is becoming more of an art and a science. Yes or no? You get all the inputs in your B school about the science of persuasion, but the art part is very, very important. The Americans assume, or most of us assume, what works in our home territory will work anywhere without even trying to analyze how the audience is going to take it. And that's why I always say preparing for a negotiation without the other party in mind is like you writing a love letter to whomsoever it may concern. Very difficult, isn't it? You need to have something specific. So what are those factors in which I can become a master persuader is what we're going to discuss. And I'm sure you also realize if I'm continuously agreeing to somebody, you either feel that the other person is very dominant or I am too submissive. So the practical curve, I'm sure you must have guessed by now. Where I understand the needs of the other party, and the other party is also understands the needs of my or the interests of me, and then we come to a conclusion. This is called negotiation. Practical, very, very practical. I'm sure you agree from this curve, if you have to be a master persuader, you also have to be a master negotiator. And if I have to be a master negotiator, you also need to be a master persuader. What are the factors that go into this is very, very important. But I don't mind if you forget everything that I'm going to talk today. But the one mantra for a persuader is, do you have the capacity to listen to the other party? And a very famous negotiator who's done millions of dollars of business with the Tata Consultancy Services, one of my prime clients, he has a nice slogan on his desk, and I think we should get this drill as a mantra. And that was, I understand, I need not accept. First of all, do you try to understand what the other person's part is? Most of us, when we get into a negotiation or thing, we just talk with our agenda and we refuse to look at what the agenda of the other person is. We refuse to even understand what the plan, and that's why many negotiations get stunted even before they start. What do I mean by this? Let's say you work for a company and your associate comes and says, my only sister is getting married, I want 20 days leave. Imagine if the boss says, I cannot give you leave. Why? Because when my sister got married, I didn't take 20 days leave. And we are obviously going to say that's your problem, not my problem. Maybe you don't like your sister. But suppose you're asked why. He would have told you that my parents are not alive and my sister lives in a village and I need to go and perform all the duties of a parent. Then your perspective may change. This is what Stephen Covey talks about empathy, or try to understand before asking others to understand you. I think this is a fundamental quality for a persuader. Because we only talk from our agenda. Isn't it the fact that we only look at the world with our agenda? Most of the times, like a small town tailor, he goes to the Vatican to see the Pope. And when he returns, his friends ask him, can you please describe the Pope for us? And he says, oh, he's a 40 size regular. He's only worried about his knowledge. There may be so many other things about the Pope, but you only look from your perspective. That's why George Bernard Shaw has a brilliant quotation. He says, my tailor is the most intelligent person I met in my life. And why? Because he's the only one who takes fresh measurements whenever I go to him. So can we also take fresh measurements when we meet our, not adversaries, the other party, and judge them on what they bring to the table and not carry baggage, which can be one of the biggest disasters in persuasion. The moment I carry a baggage, the moment I stereotype people, the moment I place people in boxes, Americans are like this, Russians are like this, I have lost an opportunity to understand the other person. I think this should be a fundamental plank. I thought that's why this is very, very important. I understand, I need not accept. Now, to give you the best example of this, how many of you have heard of this Indian text called Bhagavad Gita? Now, what happens in Bhagavad Gita? Can you explain it to our friends? I'm not talking about the religious angle. What exactly happens in the Bhagavad Gita? Yeah.
So there is a king who has to go to war with his family against his cousins over ancestral land.
Yeah.
And so he asks God to be his charioteer.
Yeah.
And in the process of going to the battlefield, God gives him words of wisdom.
Yeah.
He asks him all the questions about life. And,
Okay.
And those words of
The
wisdom
mentoring,
are
yeah.
Bhagavad Gita.
Which country are you from?
I was born here in the U.S.
Okay.
I'm from India.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Please give her a good round of applause. This is Prince refuses to fight because he's up against his cousins. And then Krishna, Lord Krishna is the one who mentors him. The Bhagavad Gita has got 18 chapters. In the entire first chapter, you will only hear Arjuna Uvacha, Arjuna Uvacha, Arjuna Uvacha, which means Arjuna says, Arjuna says, Arjuna says. Lord Krishna knows that Arjuna is talking crap, but he does not interfere. First time, verse 4, you will hear Bhagavan Uvacha, which means I will allow you to say what you have, and then I will prove by arguments, and I will come and give my theory. I think as a salesperson or a marketer, if you can have this attitude, that's what is going to give you riches. First, try to understand the pain points of the other party before jumping in with your conclusions, or before jumping in with your predictions. So, having said this much, to understand what are the factors or what are the principles of persuasion as enunciated by Dr. Cialdini, as enunciated by Robert Shell and Maria Musa, let's understand. I'm going to give you a simple exercise. I'd like you to form groups. We'll just turn around to 4 or 5 people and we will discuss for about 5 minutes and give me a result. Now, assume that all of you are passengers in an aircraft. The aircraft crashes into a deep, remote jungle, and there are only 6 survivors, as you can see. The pilot of the aircraft, an army officer, a wildlife expert, a marketing executive, a female nurse, and of course you. I want you to think for 2 minutes individually, don't discuss with your friends, and put down on your notebooks or iPads, whom will you choose as a leader to lead you out of the jungle? You cannot choose yourself. You may be God's gift to mankind, but you cannot choose yourself. Among the 5, whom will you choose and why? And after you made your choice, I just want you to quickly turn around to your friends and then discuss, and the group should come to an agreement and tell me we will choose A or B and come out with 1 or 2 reasons also. First, make your individual choice. Is this clear? All missing data can be suitably assumed. Right? So start. First, make your individual choice. Maybe 3 minutes or 5 minutes of discussion, and the group should come to an agreement on whom will you choose.
Where we crashed?
Pardon?
Where did we crash?
In a deep remote jungle. We crashed in a deep remote Now, one complaint against Mukta. I thought this task was persuaded to come and listen to CK, but I think the title should be Persuade with Pizza. Anyway, thank you. So, have you discussed? Can I just ask quickly a group of people? Yeah. Who do you think whom the group will be?
I think we're going with Army officer.
Army officer? Yeah, next.
Marketing?
Marketing? Yeah.
We were trying to pick something other than Army officer because we thought that was the obvious, but we couldn't really think of a good reason not to.
Okay. I don't know about the others, but this group definitely will be eaten by the lions.
Yeah.
Because you're not yet decided, right? What is it here? Army? Army?
So we have to
definitely
There's
reason
one
that's
is
a reason.
officer, one is a nurse, because nurse will be a better mediator
Okay.
and catalyzes.
Okay, yeah.
Wildlife.
Okay, fine. I'm sure you'll agree, there's nothing like a right or wrong answer in this exercise. And this exercise is a very famous exercise that has been done in many famous B schools across the world and many Fortune 100 organizations. Very, very interestingly, across all cultures, 90% of the people have chosen the two most popular choices. Please mark my words. I'm not saying right or wrong choices. The two most popular choices have been the army officer and the wildlife expert. And so the two most popular reasons for somebody to persuade somebody is authority and expertise. I'm sure that is evident, isn't it? We are going to discuss, apart from these two, what is important, but please realize one of the easiest ways to persuade somebody is authority. And authority has three subsets: titles, tailors, and tunes. Titles, as the name says, a designation. If the same message is delivered by a CEO or a VP or a technical architect or a software architect, it has a much better way of reaching the other person rather than an XYZ, a faceless person doing this. And authority can be used very effectively to persuade the other party. Last year, I come from Dubai, and we have a conglomerate, an Arab conglomerate, which owns 6 skyscrapers in the central business district of Dubai. They floated a tender to convert these buildings into smart buildings, right from the entry to surveillance and everything to be electronically controlled. 2 firms were shortlisted: Juniper Networks and Cisco Systems. Juniper Networks had prior expertise, and they were the most likely person to get the award because of tremendous experience. But Cisco didn't want to lose this opportunity because this is the central business district and the entire Gulf country was opening up. You know what they did? They flew down the CEO of Cisco Systems to Dubai and made the CEO make a commitment to the Arab conglomerate that in return for the order, the Arabs could use, the Emirati could use the Cisco logo in all their marketing collateral, the brochures, the souvenirs, and the emails, and things like that. And in addition, he said every building will have a neon sign which says "Powered by Cisco." And the chances of marketing this becomes much, much better when you are making it associated with a powerful brand. And it was signed, sealed, and delivered, even though Juniper Networks had much better expertise. So never underestimate the power of authority. Now, maybe you guys know this. The president of Indonesia had finalized an order for some, I think, 120 aircraft, and the order was supposed to be 60% to Boeing and 40% to Airbus. Now, Boeing apparently made some representation to Prime Minister. President Obama himself makes a call to the Indonesian president, and the order is converted 100% to Boeing. So authority can be used in very effective ways, and especially in IT organizations. People go and struggle with the client for 5 times, 6 times, they're not able to break through, and then they get their CEO, and within 5 minutes the client signs the contract. Please understand, in certain societies, especially the Middle East, highly hierarchical, and they want no one else except the CEO to come and talk to them. So be aware, it may not be the case in the US. Here, what you see is what you get, but there it is not. So use authority effectively. If you have a proper title, exploit that. That can be a very powerful form of persuasion. What do I mean by tailors in persuasion? What do I mean by tailors?
Measure you each time.
Measuring?
Measure you every time they give you.
Measure you every time.
Something that's very personalized to someone.
Personalized, customized. Anything else? Tailors is nothing but the clothes that you wear. And this makes an impact when you're trying to persuade someone. Let's say you're going for a sales pitch to banking, finance, and all these sectors. These guys are very, very formal. The Wall Street guys. You can't go there in sneakers and jeans. But you go to a media company like Yahoo, Google, and all that, you are permitted some kind of informal wear. So be aware that dress matters a lot. What do you mean by tunes? As a persuader, what do you mean by tunes?
What do you say?
What do you say? Your communication skills have to be explicit and it has to make an impact. Please remember, when I say communication, I'm not talking about using jargon. By using jargon, you can easily confuse the other party. But can you come out with an elevator pitch that is simple, clear, and compelling? Otherwise, these people have a lot of jargon and they confuse people. Like a lawyer who tells a witness, is your appearance here today, this morning, pursuant to a deposition notice I sent your attorney? She says, no, this is the way I dress normally to work. I think she understood only appearance. So there's no point in confusing the other party. So when you go, and that's why if you see in negotiations, spokespersons are the persons who can really convey a point in a simple, clear manner. So let's just give you one formula for being a clear communicator. I call this as ABC. When you're making a pitch to the client, or when you're writing your emails, or when you're making a sales proposal, be accurate in your choice of words. Don't unnecessarily dump jargon which the other person cannot understand, but does it make sense first time I read it? In my 7th grade in school, one of my friends was not doing well in studies. My class teacher calls his father, and in front of the entire class he says, your son is belligerent, cantankerous, and boisterous. The father says, thank you, but please tell me whether my son is good or bad. I don't know what you mean by this. So there's absolutely that communication has no meaning at all. B is for brevity. I consult with a lot of companies on advanced presentation skills. The higher the manager is, the longer is his presentation. And many clients tell me, these guys come out with a laundry list. Now we are this, we are this, we are the largest company in Southeast Asia, we have 45 ODCs, we have 2.5 lakh employees, and the customer says, God bless you, but how are you going to solve my problem? That is where the elevator pitch comes into the picture. Be brief. There's no need to use unnecessary words and sentences. That's all.
Does that not come into titles though? Because they're showing how great they are.
Beg your pardon?
Does that not come, if they talk about how great they are and how many employees they've got and how many clients they've got,
Yeah.
does that not sort of tie in with titles? Because it sort of shows what a great company they've got and all these great clients that they have.
Okay. The title or the, what you're saying can come after you made a point that we can also address you here. I'll tell you typically what happens. Let's say you're talking to an SME client and you start saying that we are this, this and this. Sometimes, most of the times, the client is very scared about it. They say, no, you guys are too big. I don't think you can handle us. First, assure the customer that we are here to do business with you and why we have the capacity. And then, you don't have to worry because we have 45 offices, this. That's what I mean. So, be brief. But that doesn't mean you lose the meaning of the sentence. Most of the times, we are very brief, but the message is lost. That's why, if you want a corollary to this, be concise and complete also. Otherwise, you'll end up like the bank branch manager in rural India. He sends a telegram. Those were not the days of emails. He sends a telegram to his head office. Tell me what do you understand by this? Wife ill, send substitute. And the head office sends an equally terse telegram. Regret, I'm a banker, not a broker. It's a classic case of message being brief, but the meaning was not complete. And that all this happens because of the third factor in communication, that is C, which is clarity. We think we are clear, but it's not clear to the other party. Why does this happen? Because communication has three aspects: intent, content, and impact. And in my website, I put this quotation on the masthead. It is by Antonio Porcia, an Italian poet. I know what I have given you, I do not know what you have received. What you have received is much more important in communication. Did you see the classic example of that Saudi Arabian story? The American intention was good, the content equally good, but the impact was completely lost because they understood in a completely different manner. Like a professor telling a class of students, hey, why are you looking outside at the monkeys when I'm here? Very dangerous, isn't it? I said something and you imagine something else. Now, I'm fond of telling this example in every session. Mumta's heard it probably many times. And I did a session on women entrepreneurship in IIM Bangalore, which Mumta was a part. There was a lady who got very excited with this example. She said, CK, what a fantastic example. I'm going to tell my husband, I'm going to tell my friends, I'm going to tell my colleagues. I said, thank you. It was a compliment, right? After 3 months, I bumped into her at a party. She comes rushing and says, oh, CK, how nice to see you. You know something? After that wonderful workshop of yours, whenever I see a monkey, I think of you. And that was supposed to be a compliment, by the way. Her intent was good. Her intention was to praise me. I hope so. And content was also good according to her, but impact would have been completely lost if I did not understand the intentions. So while communicating with your clients, please do quick research on what are they likely to agree, what they don't, and then you will be much, much better. And we are not the only ones who make these mistakes. Corporates make these mistakes. You must have read in a recent article in HBR, the dealers of Mazda car in Chile asked them to withdraw a car called the puta, which means prostitute in the local language. Imagine, they are all companies with so much of funds, and how can they do this? They simply don't do any analysis. So can you do this, and then you become much, much better. I'll quickly go through the other forms of persuasion. The world over, expertise is recognized. So when you don't have sufficient title, or you haven't moved up the value chain, the best way to project your, to persuade is to say that what expertise do you have? Have you heard of Chubb Steel Safe? Very popular thing in the US. They manufacture these bank safety lockers. They wanted to project their products in Singapore. One of the ad agencies said, let's have a fancy actress peddling this product. But somebody else said no. And they went and got hold of a burglar, a thief, who's got 15 years of experience breaking bank lockers. And he comes and gives a statement, in my 15 years of bank safe breaking, I tried my best to break into Chubb Steel Safe, but was never successful. Whom will you believe? Actress or the thief? Thief, because he's an expert. Of course, don't know this, but this is a fact. This is complete did this. So, if you have sufficient expertise, please project it. The next, especially when you're going to a client, one of the easiest ways to persuade, of course, this requires continuous dealing. If you are consistent in your behavior, if you're consistent in your delivery, the client is not worried about the flim flam that you have or the glamour that you project, but are you reliable in your terms of delivery? A very famous courier company in the US had this slogan for a long, long time: on time, every time. Not on time, once upon a time. So I think that consistency has a remarkable effect on how the others perceive you as a service provider. Now, the mistake that sales and marketing professionals make is, we think these three are only enough. These are the only factors needed. But I'll quickly go through what else is required, which Professor Chialdini talks as likability. Nielsen Marketing Research, they did a study recently and said your intent to buy a product or a service goes up 4 times if it is recommended by someone whom you like. Think it over. So if you are able to establish that likability, apart from being task oriented, one of the biggest complaints against engineers is you think only in numbers, you don't think of the art part of it, or you don't relate to people at all. And I think selling or marketing or persuasion essentially is about how do you relate to the other person. So establish that likability by getting into personal experiences or learning to appreciate people, and sometimes even a sense of humor. It helps in building a good bond. When I say sense of humor, I'm not asking you to crack some jokes like I saw 2 elephants in first class or something like that, but something very, very relevant. The CEO of digital marketing was having a sales conference, and he insisted that they had to complete a target by March 31. Everyone in the audience said, sorry, not possible, we need time till April 15. He insisted it should be done by March 31. Then one of the junior executives got up and said, Mr. Joe, you're talking bullshit. Exact words, huh? Imagine, you're the CEO and a young upstart calls you, tells bullshit. Now everybody, there was hushed silence because he thought he was going to be really taking it out on him. But you know what Mr. Joe said? Amazing insight. Other people take 3 months to come to this conclusion. I tell you, the entire audience laughed like this. Of course, ultimately they had to complete by March 31. That's a different story. But the fact that he did not take himself so seriously made him so user-friendly, and he was able to get things done much, much better. Most of the bosses are very porcupine, they get immediately stiffen up. So if you're able to establish this rapport, you have a tremendous way of doing things. And one more good thing about humor is it reduces friction and it has the ability to make even tough things seem easy. Very recently, my relatives, we were having a party at home and it was supposed to be a joyous occasion. There was some misunderstanding in the family and everybody was sitting as if it was a funeral. And my nephew, he walks in. You know, these young boys are very fond of exchanging SMS jokes. He said, I'm going to tell you an SMS joke. And we all said, okay. He said, this happened in India, the king is, mother asks her son, who is Tipu Sultan? Son says, I don't know. The mother says, concentrate on your studies and you will know. After a while, the son asks the mother, who is Sheila auntie? Mother says, I don't know. He says, concentrate on your husband and you know. And, you know, once you laugh, is it possible for me to look at somebody in anger? The renowned humorist Charlie Chaplin says, imagine four laborers taking a load. Imagine the worker in the front cracks a joke. It is impossible for all the others to continue without laughing. You have to keep the load down and laugh and then take the load. So humor has that remarkable power of de-stressing, and in the workplace, filled with the targets, you're going to find this humor very, very useful, but be careful. It can backfire also. You have to use it very judiciously. And why do I say this with so much of confidence in an esteemed institution like Wharton? Because this is not frivolous. There's an excellent book called The Levity Effect by Gostick and Christopher. They've done research on Fortune 100 companies where they have conclusively proved that having an element of fun has greatly improved productivity, and they've got some statistics to prove also. So I think that brings as far as the liability is concerned. And when you don't have the power or the authority, one of the good ways to extend or to be persuasive is insist on reciprocity, or doing favors, or being proactive. If I do X for you, will you do Y for me? Which is a common precept in negotiation. So use this effectively to gain favors. You know, what's the place where it was Katrina hurricane? New Orleans. You know, New Orleans was devastated some years ago, and a lot of help poured in from various world bodies. New Orleans citizens were very surprised to find an unreasonable amount of money, disproportionate kind of money and materials came from a small town in Holland. Absolutely no clue what relation. Their water dikes, they had a burst. And some engineers from New Orleans had read about this from the newspaper and went on their own, spending their own money, and repaired this. And the grateful villagers remembered this after 12 years and sent money hugely. So enlist or capture the power of reciprocity. But don't expect this as a birthright in negotiations. Just because I've done something for you, you're not obligated to return the favor, but generally people have that attitude. We also talk about social proof, especially when the other party doesn't know much about you. Can you tell me what is social proof and how can you use this in persuasion? What is the meaning of social proof and how can you use this in persuasion? Yeah.
I think it's a form of credibility. If you see that others perceive an individual in a certain way, have confidence in that individual, then you assume that there's a reason for that and you have confidence in them.
Okay. It all depends on how many people endorse your product. If you can show more people endorsing your product, especially when I don't know much about you, it becomes easy for me to persuade. So you have a lineup of clients, and let's say the Fortune top 10, 6 people are my clients, and they've been with me for 5 years. So there is more. I'll be more inclined to treat you as with some confidence rather than someone who simply comes and says, I'm an expert. Use social proof effectively wherever possible. In your case, when you're going for a job, obviously, the Wharton MBA is going to be a very powerful form of persuasion, and for someone who doesn't have any clue about all this. Scarcity is a principle. Make use of bad news effectively to persuade somebody, because it's been psychologically proved people don't react to good news as well as bad news. Thermal insulating company went to a town in the US. One half of the town was told, if you use our product, you will save X amount of dollars. Is it logical? The other half was told, if you do not use our products, you will lose X amount of dollars. Guess where the sales was more? Lose. In fact, both were the same. But we have the innate quality to react to bad news. So use bad news legitimately and not to scare the other person, but use it whenever you have a shortage of something. Also, you can do this. Well, I'll just sort of very quickly summarize. Please remember, one of the best ways to persuade the other party is to gain authority, either by your title or by your demeanor, and more importantly, the way you communicate your ideas in a clear, crisp, and compelling manner. Not necessary for vocabulary to be very, very flowery, but are you doing the right thing at the right time? Next, expertise. If you have expertise in a particular subject, you have a domain certification, or you've done something, you know what to do, please project this appropriately. I am more likely to believe an expert than someone who simply comes with a faceless credential. And consistency, do you deliver the goods consistently every time, and not just once upon a time. And apart from all this, I think likability involves having a sense of persona, especially for sales guys like you. I think what do you say after you say hello is very, very important. Many times I've heard complaints from clients that these guys directly jump into the price. They don't even have that small talk. Believe me, in the US, you cannot have small talk for more than 5 minutes. The guys are likely to get upset, say, cut the crap and come to the point. But in Europe, don't mistake me, you may have to extend a conversation for 20 minutes, which has got nothing to do with business. People who do business with Sweden and many other European countries say weather is a major topic there. It's not just to be passed off like that. And you must be having the patience to talk about this. So the initial small talk, what do you say after you hello? Can you be a master at that? And these people generally bring up that likability factor. Have a healthy sense of humor, and that automatically brings you close to the other party. Reciprocity is nothing but you doing favors in advance or as a quid pro quo. If you give me the order, I'll be able to give you a discount, or I'll be able to extend better terms in many ways. Social proof is how many people endorse your product or a service, especially when there's an uncertain climate. And finally, you have scarcity, which is again use negative information in an appropriate manner. But let me tell you one thing, all this will fail if you do not have one quality. If I call them as pillars, there is one quality which is the foundation. Can you tell me what that is? In when trying to persuade somebody, this is the fundamental quality. Without this, all this will collapse.
Empathy.
Sincerity. One more word. Empathy. One more word which will signify all these things. Integrity. Yes, this is a part of it. Yeah. Emotional.
Emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. All this is a part of this word. I just want the word from you. Understanding. Okay.
Respect.
Respect.
Listen.
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 Listening. Okay, listening. Character. Can you think of one word?
Personality.
Personality. This is all a part of it. That's one word. I want this to come from you, yeah?
Authenticity.
Authenticity, yes, but there's one thing. Genuine, yes, all this, what you're saying is right. But if there's one word that will signify all this. Yeah? It starts with C.
Communication.
Charisma.
Charisma, communication,
Character.
character, compassion. One more word. Credibility, exactly. Please give a round of applause. I think without this, persuasion will fail. And credibility has two components: expertise and trustworthiness. Today's corporate world has got enough and more managers who have expertise. But where they fail is trustworthiness. Can you think of the Rajat Guptas of the world? Can you think of the Enron crisis? Can you think of the Lehman Brothers? All staffed by extremely competent executives. Absolutely no problem here. But trustworthiness, they failed miserably, and that's why nobody wants to believe them anymore. An eminent writer like Fareed Zakaria, he writes for the Washington Post or Time. Remember, he's so talented, but he made the mistake of lifting one passage or something, and you see everybody looks at him with a jaundice coming up. Unfortunate, isn't it? So that's why the trustworthiness is very important, apart from expertise. But that doesn't mean you don't have any expertise. You need to have a judicious combination. If you have this, you can become much, much better. This is where I thought I'll stop. If I have some questions, I can take a couple of questions and then we'll say bye before I leave you with one small anecdote. Any questions, please? Is this making some sense? Okay? No questions? Only two things are possible. You understood everything or understood nothing. And I think you understood everything, isn't it? Yeah, please, yeah.
How do you cultivate some of these things? Because it sounds like a lot of these traits are personality. Like, if you don't have a sense of humor, how do you become funny?
How do you become funny?
Or, you know.
Okay. Join Toastmasters. You heard of Toastmasters?
Yeah.
They will actually teach you how to be humorous and how to respond to a situation and how to answer questions instantly, especially for sales guys. We have something called as staple topics. And you have to come out with immediate responses. Now here's a quick question for Wharton MBA graduates. Now I'll give you the topic. Any one of you should get up and respond to this. And I just want to see how you handle the topic. Are we ready? Just 1 minute it will take. You have to speak on the topic for at least 30 seconds. My parents are in the iron and steel business. My mother irons and my father steels. Please get up. Anyone, quick. We don't have this kind of time to think of this. My parents are in the iron and steel business. My mother irons and my father steels. Quick. Anybody, just respond. Quick, yeah. Or anybody, yeah. Just try, just try. You can just sit, you don't have to stand, but just try from there. Once again, my parents are in the iron and steel business. My mother irons and my father steels. Yeah.
It's a very profitable industry. We made a lot of wealth from other people's wealth because my mother stole most of it.
Okay.
My father.
No, mother irons. My mother irons.
It's
Okay,
a team,
okay.
we work together.
Okay.
My father irons the notes out, so we have this whole bundle of money out there at home.
Okay.
He's funding the Wharton MBA.
Anybody else? Quick, quick. I just, yeah.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Mine too.
Mine too.
My parents too.
Okay, your response?
They want to make it legit, so that's why they sent me to Wharton.
Okay. Anybody else linking this ironing and okay, I'll tell you one of the nicest responses for this I heard was instantly, yeah? He didn't get any time. Yes, indeed, my parents are in the iron and steel business. My mother irons out our difficulties at home, and my father steals the show in the office with his performance. I thought that was a brilliant response. Because most of the people who attempt this topic invariably talk about the negative part. My father steals from the office and different perspective and turn the table across. And if this is one skill that all you guys need to develop, because the customer may ask you an inconvenient question. And you should be ready with a quick, witty retort. Like it happened in a bakery in the US. One Sunday, lazy afternoon, only the owner and the salesman were hanging around. A customer walks in and says, I want half a loaf of bread. The salesman says, I'm sorry, sir. We are allowed to give only full loaves of bread. We cannot give half loaves. The customer insists that he be served half a loaf. There's a small altercation. And then the salesman gets so irritated. He goes to the owner who's sitting behind and says, sir, I have a customer I have an idiot, a fool, who wants half a loaf of bread. And suddenly he finds that the customer standing right behind him. And he says, and this gentleman here wants the other half. And the owner is very happy. After he goes, he says, hey son, you managed the situation very well. Where are you from? He says, oh sir, I am from a country called Canada, where half the population are hockey players and the other half are prostitutes. The owner is aghast. He says, "Hey, my wife is from Canada." And which hockey team does she play for? By this quick response, this guy saved his job. I think on a different level, you as marketing guys also have to have the sense of repartee, which has to do with a lot of managing difficult customer questions, right? Anyway, so I'll end this. Thank you for the wonderful opportunity for this talk. All those who invited me and who had some faith in me and thought I'd make something good. And I am also so delighted. In fact, we were all talking how to address such an estimable organization. And when I put up this notice on Facebook, for the first time in my life, I got around 300 likes and 266 comments. And that talks a lot about Wharton and a lot about CK. So I've been telling you a lot of anecdotes. So shall I end with one anecdote? A Chinese Buddhist Zen master goes to a hotel to drink tea. The tea is $20. He gives a $100 bill and waits for the change. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, no change. He gets so upset with the waiter and says, "Hey, I gave you a $100 bill for a $20 tea. Where's my change? Where's the change?" The waiter looks obediently at the master and says, "Oh, master, don't you know? Change must come from within." I hope you got the message. You can have much more engrossing speakers than me. You can have much better people than me. But the decision to change must come from within. If you're going to think of this as a pizza party organized by your class, then God bless you, nothing is going to change. But if you feel you got some value out of the session today and start practicing this, that will be the best way, and that will be the greatest compliment for a speaker who thinks who's made some impact today. Thank you once again for having me. Wish you good luck and all the best.